Not fragile like a flower.
Fragile like a bomb.
Hello, and welcome to episode 25 of Like a Bomb. I'm Bailey.
I'm Jiller, Mom.
And yeah, welcome to a new episode. It's been a year since we've done our podcast. And talking about some random people or subjects to women-esque related that we decide on each week.
Yes, and I realized that I haven't done a Facebook group or TikTok videos that I meant to do, but I've been really busy.
I have one video I made on TikTok and then I haven't touched it because I made it in January and I also kind of stopped using TikTok because I got a new phone, so I don't have it on the new phone.
Oh God, I started looking at new phones because Piper and I need new phones. Like, we definitely need new phones.
Well, I got mine because one, the pressure of being on our phone plan, which was just more expensive to everyone, and then
Yes.
it was a deal into being more expensive, but we decided it's worth the money to upgrade our phones because tariffs, and we're like, this way we have a brand new phone
Yep.
right before everything hits the fan.
Yeah.
So we can be good for a little bit longer, and we have Google phones. We don't have Apple, which they're all known to phase out. Apple's the only one that's legally been prosecuted for it. Google's been better about it, at least. They don't phase out as easily.
Well, we have 10s. Like, Piper and I have 10s.
Well, no, because
right?
it's recent.
Wait, no. Do we have a 13? What do I have?
I don't know what you have.
I don't either. Maybe I
But
have a
it's
13.
been more recent where they've legally been having to be better and actually, not consumerism and forced waste of phones.
Now
Because
I want
Apple
to know what
got
I have.
prosecuted to some regard for it. There was some legal.
I want this.
Whatever. I don't know the exacts. I just know ifs. But yeah.
Now I want to know what kind of phone I have. What phone do I have? How do I? What?
Go to your settings. I don't know. I don't have Apple. The only reason I have an iPad is because Procreate and things.
I want to know what I have.
I don't know.
Okay, profile set. Nope.
Why don't you text Piper?
well.
She probably knows what phone you have.
Oh, I do have a 13. I have a 13 Pro Max.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
You're
Well,
still pretty recent.
I was looking at my brain just went blank. I was looking this morning because her and I are gonna need phones very, very soon. And I was looking to see like how much would it cost us to upgrade our phones. And then I looked at what the next phone's coming out because the 17 will come out in like September. And I was like looking at the prices. Oh my God. It's never been this much. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bad.
So
if we had waited till roughly now to switch our phone plans, we would have gotten our phones entirely for free. Because we went to Google Fi, and they're like, come get the 9. Well, it was the 9 fully for free. I think it would have still been an extra like $100 or so. They're still technically for free. We only still paid like $100 or so for the Pros. We have the 9 Pros in my pretty purple case that, only if you're watching on YouTube you can see.
Yeah, no, we're going to need new phones. So, I mean, of course, we're going to wait till the 17 comes out. But even like there was like a 12 on there, and it was still stupid price.
Oh, yeah, no, it's insanely expensive. It's
never been this bad. I'm like, oh my God. So I don't know what we're going to do about phones. I guess I need to figure out the car thing first. So
yeah.
I was going to go to that dealership, but since they didn't listen to the fact that I was looking at the pre-owned, not the new.
Because they want to sell the new ones because they'll get more money from you.
Yes. But because I'm going to go to the thrift store that has all the dolls.
Yes.
Now that I'm going to go on this doll like recruitment for my army, I probably will not be able to find all the dolls that I want for my doll army.
Just steal Piper's.
Yeah, but they're going to be destroyed by being outside. So
true, but it would also be important to note for those listening and curious what the heck of talking dolls. It's finding creepy dolls out for Halloween, and my sister likes to collect the creepy dolls.
She does. She has given some away over the years, and we used it as home defense when, for the first time ever, she was at home alone a weekend a few years ago, and I told her to just put the creepy dolls on the front porch, and she's like, "Great idea." So she did, and her boyfriend at the time was terrified, and so he apparently called her from his truck and said, "I'm not coming in the house until you move the dolls." She said she wasn't moving the dolls, so apparently he came a running through the house.
I think I remember this.
So,
He hated those dolls.
yeah, they're not my biggest fans either. I do not have them in my house, so that makes me happy, but now I'm about to go recruit an entire army
Just stash
to
them at Piper's in the meantime.
yeah.
I'm sure Nick will be happy.
He doesn't seem too bothered by the
No, I don't
dolls.
think he is.
I think he is slightly, but not like normal people would be.
Him and Piper are a good fit. So I think if Piper likes them, bonk my mic. He likes them.
Yes, they are definitely a very good fit. I just need him to get a 9 to 5, but that's okay. So, in case you're wondering, I am not trying to conquer the world. Maybe I am getting a doll army because my neighbors made me very upset. So, I am going to decorate my yard like I've wanted to, but out of respect for my neighbors and my mother, I have
Halloween.
not done so. I am going to Halloween it up with creepy dolls, and I actually thought yesterday, um, I could get like the little kids' water guns and paint them black or silver. And so I literally could have a doll army like lined up in formation with little guns.
You may, well, if they're tiny little water guns, they don't need orange tips. They're fine. You're gonna need to buy some fabric to add a little bit of flair to the dolls. But it could
Oh, I
just be
know.
your own little militia that
Yeah.
just are armed with little water guns.
Yep. Yeah, I gotta find the dolls. And so there is one thrift store that has more than I normally see, and they're usually relatively cheap. But again, now that I am going to go look for my doll army, I have a feeling I'm not going to find the dolls that I want. So if you're listening and you know me personally and you have some creepy dolls that you are looking to get rid of, or you find some anywhere, just I am collecting for my army.
Or if you don't know us personally, P.O. Boxes options later on, you can email us at likeabombpodcast@gmail.com so you can send her creepy dolls.
I'm
I don't
super
want any. No,
excited.
thank you.
I will not take Annabelle reproductions or Robert the Doll reproductions.
No.
Right? That's all.
Yes, Robert the Doll. We saw it in Key West.
I know. Didn't your
No,
sister get it? But didn't your sister buy a
our
Robert the
dad
Doll?
bought it for her.
Okay. Well, yeah, she has. Does she still have that one?
I
I
don't
don't know.
know.
I don't know what she does with her
Robert the
life.
Doll's big.
Oh, I know.
Don't you also have to be like thank you and everything?
Yeah,
And
you have to
you have to be
be.
very kind to Robert the Doll.
Yeah. There was a rumor that Annabelle got stolen like recently. And I was like, well, that sounds terrifying if that's real, but that's okay. My house is already hunted, and I am looking at Amazon Prime days to get the cameras so I can set them up so that we can find out
But also,
what is
screw
happening.
Amazon and Bezos.
Yes, no,
Just unfortunately,
I'm just poor.
how things have become, monopolies
Yes,
are a thing.
yes,
And
monopolies.
Amazon's a great place for a lot of stuff.
Yep, unfortunately,
It's hard to find some of the stuff elsewhere.
monopolies have been more of an issue than people realize.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Google has become a verb, and there's been legal proceedings for Google being a monopoly and
Yeah.
breaking that up, mostly in just like the internet search engines and things and how they prioritize their own stuff first. Like, you immediately see the
Yes.
Google AI, which, first off, is hot garbage. That's a whole nother tangent.
Check your links. Always check your links.
Yes, and don't click the first one, always.
Always check
Sometimes it's
your
good,
links.
but not every time.
Yep. You gotta check. You gotta do your own research. My words don't. I'm hungry all of a sudden.
Good for you. Now you're gonna make me yawn.
Sorry. I slept in till like 5 today.
Wow, I got up at 6:15 and went, why am I awake? So I tried to go back and forth to sleep, and it worked a little bit, and then I got up at 8 because I'm like, screw this, my back or my neck hurts, and I can't sleep. The bright sun. And
Yeah, sun is stupid. How people can sleep through sun, I don't understand.
And naturally, I normally wake up at 6:45 for work, so now my body's like, it's 6. The sun is starting to come up. Let's get up. It's like, no. It's Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I've been getting up. I think the latest I've slept has been like 6:30, and that's only been a couple of days this summer because I did work. I did have to go into town, to city, to
I mean,
work.
yeah, you've had practically no summer break.
No, and I go back to work, what, next
Monday?
Tuesday? No, it's the 8th
Tuesday?
because Monday I have my MRI.
Oh, yeah, Tuesday.
Yay! So I start Tuesday at a new school for a month, and I don't have enough information, so I'm a little anxious about that. But hey, full-time work, teacher
Job,
summer.
money,
Yep.
the unfortunate things we need to live.
Yep. So I'm sorry, I can't stop now. I don't know where the. And apparently, when I get hungry, I yawn. I didn't know there was a connection, but I
I
mean, I
guess
get
so.
fuel gives you energy. I get that, but okay. Anything else other than my doll army? I don't have anything. Looking for a car still, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, life is a hot mess. I'm not even gonna touch politics right now.
No, it's not. It's not worth it.
No,
Yeah.
no.
So I'm
Yeah,
ready
what's your
whenever you
story?
are. I went back and forth because apparently the American Red Cross was founded by a woman. And so I almost did that. I looked up a bunch of notes for that and found the person who started the actual Red Cross that didn't start in America because not everything started here. We're a pretty new country, just so you know.
Yes.
We just celebrated our birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, we're almost 250 years old
Yeah, we
next year.
just started. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know where this came from. I'm sorry. I'm doing missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
That's what I'm doing.
Well, it was bound to happen, so I will say my
You
stuff.
go do all yours. I probably won't have as much great resources anyways. So, go for
Okay.
it.
It was bound to happen. Great minds, I guess. I don't know. Okay. So I'm just diving in at this point.
Yeah.
I started. My first thing I have is the symbol of the red handprint. It symbol it. The red handprint can be a symbol in and of itself or over the mouth or over a mouth when drawn in a picture. It represents the silenced voices of the missing and murdered women and girls and increases awareness and remembrance. And if you paid attention, this was a huge deal at the 2024 awards that actor DeFaro Woon Tai wore the makeup of the red hand over his mouth, and it was like huge controversy. Everybody was having a cow. Why would he do this? Well, it's a public forum. That seems like a really good time to get a message.
Yes. This is how you protest and make announcements. Also, before you dive any further, because I know what you're talking about since I did a little bit of my own, content warning. It is going to discuss murder and things and missing women and not
Sexual
so
assault.
great things.
I don't die. Yeah. Well, I guess I
It's
don't
just
know.
a general like, hey,
Yes.
if you don't want to talk about the murder and
You
other
don't.
things.
Yes, I don't go deeply into other things. I'll let you do that.
Okay,
I don't know
well, I
what
don't have
research
as
you have.
much other
Yeah.
than a few statistics.
So my information came from two main sites. Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is actually part of the U.S. Department of the Interior, which is an official government site. It even says at the top, this is an official government site. If you want to know how to check this, click here. I don't know. And it says, our mission is to enhance the quality of life, promote economic opportunities, and to carry out the federal responsibilities entrusted to us. So basically it's saying, hey, this is the people that are overseeing the fact that we took your land and now we're promising you this land and casinos.
And
I'm sure.
other terrible things that
Yes.
we have done.
Yes. So, great. The set of notes I will tell you when I get to the other website. So these notes are from that resource, which is like most of the data is, well, some of the data, I'll just talk. The Missing and Murdered Unit within the Office of the Justice System, Missing and Murdered Cases, American Indians, and Alaskan Natives. So They keep changing terminology. Right now, I think it is, because I've seen it on license plates, it's American Indians. It was, when I was growing up, it changed to Native Americans. And then I know at one point it changed to Native American, Native American Indians. Terminology keeps changing. It just means Indigenous people who were on this land before we claim and said, it's ours. Because genetically, I was one of the conquerors. Nope, I was probably dragged over here as indentured or slave labor because Irish. No. So, okay. My brain just went. So, a 2016 National Institute of Justice study found that greater than 4 out of 5, which is the greater than was the 84.3%, which is 1.5 million women, American, Indian, and Alaska Natives experience violence. And this is higher than the national average. So 56% of it, sexual violence. And then CDC did a study, which I'm really curious. Center of Disease Control, if you don't know what the CDC is, which anybody who lived through COVID has to know what the CDC stands for, because, I mean, it was literally everything they talked about.
Yeah.
I was actually really curious that they did their own study. It was more about domestic violence and things like that to find out, and sexual violence. So they did their own study, and they found that in 2020, it was the second highest rate of homicides was for American Indians and Alaska Natives. And then it was the top 10 cause of death for females 1 to 45. And about 44% of American Indians and Alaska Natives had been raped in their life. So yes, there is trigger warning because it's bad. Half of the violent assaults that are actually taking place reported to tribal, county, city, and state law enforcement. There are federal tribal lands in our country. So we took land from Indigenous people, and then we said, oh, we're going to give you this crappy land. And you can have this. And it is considered like its own territory.
They're considered like the own little sub-nations within the US, but not
Yeah.
every tribe is recognized and things. Of which, shout out to part of the reason I chose my topic is the recent Crash Course series of Indigenous Americans. Very good.
Yeah, there's not a lot. I mean, and the thing is, you really isn't that much information. Like, you can find information, but you can't find information because there's some information, and Information or Freedom of Information Act. You can like fill out its form, get information, but not all the information is there if it hasn't actually been collected. But so tribal lands actually have their own law enforcement. So if you're, going to a law enforcement agency, it can be tribal versus like the county and city in which your lands fall near-ish, because they also be inside of a city or county. They are their own thing.
Yes.
I just brain farted. In 2016, 5,712 reports of missing Indigenous women and girls on the U.S. Department of Justice Federal Missing Persons Database. So the DOJ has a missing person databases, and there was almost 6,000 cases in there in 2016. However, 116 of all of those, which I did the percentage, is 2%, were actually found logged into the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System through the DOJ. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm really not sure I understand how you can find this in a federal thing. There's 5,700 and some. But then only 116, 2% of them are actually logged in. So, but they're logged, but they're not. So why are we not?
Because they don't like Indigenous people. Could be a lot of it. I don't know. And
Well,
resources.
Yeah. 2008 study found that violent rates is 10 times the national average on reservations. But there are no statistics for murder rates of American Indians and Alaskan Natives living in urban areas. So urban areas are cities and towns like where a lot of people live, if you didn't know what urban meant. Rural means it's like sprawling. People aren't in a small, compact space.
I think even your middle schoolers should know what urban and rural is.
They also should know what 2 plus 2 is. So moving on. But 71% of women, American Indian and Alaska Natives, reside in actual urban areas. So if they don't live on reservations, so then, and there's not statistics for it in the urban areas, and they live in the urban areas. So aren't we just now realizing that that means that there are no statistics for 71% of the population? Yes. And it also found that part of that is because they were listed as Hispanic or Asian or white or other on forms that really skews the data. So if there is no proper record of who the victims are, then you can't subcategorize it to get the information. There's an estimate of 4,200 missing and murdered that are unsolved. But then being that there's underreported, that means that estimate is just based on everything they can find. If you go to the website, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you can actually go. There's a tab that says view the missing and murdered, and it's going to give you male and female, but it actually pulls up a picture of them and when they were last seen and information. So I think it's a great resource. It's a great way to find out where people are missing maybe in your areas, because a lot of these people are, if they're alive, they're being trafficked. So that, and yes, I know doctors' offices and things like that are doing a really good job now of including that in their forms, where if you're the one filling it out and somebody's not paying attention to your form, you can say, yes, I need help.
But there's still fear.
And everybody knows that's happening now. So if everybody knows that's happening, then the traffickers are going to pay more attention to make sure you don't do that.
Yeah, I understand that. It's great, thing is happen, advice, if in the bathroom, typically in
Yep.
women's stalls or bars, whatever. But I can't remember what it was, but somehow I guess how it was presented. I'm like, well, what if, this X situation, it kind of ruins it if that person knows about it. And,
Yep. But
go up
there's
to the bartender and say, hey, I want to order X drink, which isn't a real drink or whatever. And then they're
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I know.
So, but there's no way to get the
Great, but
information.
also
Yep.
it's
There's
hard
no
to.
way to get the information to the people being trafficked without the people that are trafficking them to know the information as well.
Yeah.
Because they are being trafficked, so they're hidden. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. But the other website I used was Urban Indian Health Institute. I don't know what you used.
None of those.
It's a tribal entomology center, epidology.
Words are hard.
These are science words. It's how often diseases occurring in different groups of people and why, and prevention. So that's what that study is. Well, they also are doing, like the CDC, that usually, it's just disease control, but they also did research into, people of violence and murder and missing. So it's the same kind of idea. Plus, this is also dealing with a certain subset of our country. So when they're thinking about also what else is also happening to these people. So, and they've done multiple studies and they've titled it the same thing. They just started one report and then said that this is our second report. This is the updates to that data. And it was called Our Bodies, Our Stories. The first report says it was done in 2017. So the report is of violence against Indigenous women and people throughout the country. It does focus on women. It started with looking at data of sexual violence in Seattle, Washington, and then spread to major cities across the country. And it's tied to 71 cities. And they found in their data, it said according to the CDC, so which is what the data I looked at for the it said that it's the third leading cause of death and what is murder of American Indians and Native Alaskans, which maybe this is just a different year that the study was done by. It didn't give a year that study was done by the CDC for in this report, but the one that is on the other website, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, said 2020 CDC said it was the top 10. So I guess it depends, because like I grew up in Richmond, and for until I graduated high school, we were one of the top third murder capitals in, the country.
What?
And
I
now
didn't
it's
know this.
yep, now it's not. So I
Well,
guess it depends
no,
on the
because we
year.
still lived in the area, and I don't
Yep.
remember this.
Yep. So now it's not. So those, data changes, things change.
Cool. Virginia's a little safer. Just a
Yeah,
little
you
bit.
just don't go to parts of. So to write the reports, the Our Bodies, Our Stories, they use the Freedom of Information Act, and they pulled data from law enforcement agencies, missing person databases, media archives, social media, and they did community outreach to families and friends to collect all the data. Like they saw a name, so they would reach out, or they'd see social media. They also took social media and family and friends data and compared it to the databases, and they said, okay, well, you have this person, but they don't have a record of it, that this person is missing or murdered. So
Of
that's
course.
also data right there, seeing a disconnect. So
Mhm.
out of the 71 cities and one state agency that they reached out to, 14 agencies did not provide any data. 18 were still waiting for data. So 40 agencies out of the 72, because 71 cities and one state, provided some amount of data. That's not a great statistic on the amount of data you have if you're trying to look at all of these, and then so that messes with your data as well. So out of this, 80% of the cases were 2000 and newer, though they asked for data from starting in 1900.
Dang.
But
That's 100 years missing.
let's keep in mind how there were no computers.
No,
So it
there's a
was,
lot of things that have
yep,
just.
floods, fires, record keeping. So there's a lot of that. Granted, a lot of the data is racism,
Yes,
why
and
it's
then
skewed.
also just the fact that society is better with understanding their wrongs, unlike the beginning of the 1900s, where it's just,
Yes.
screw all of you, we don't care.
Yes. So that has changed a lot, but also the way we hold records is different. Like
We're better at it.
yes, we are way better at it. I mean, my grandparents are the first generation where there's even some amount of like usable health data, and that's not even that great, because one of my grandfathers, if you look up his records, he has multiple birth dates listed, and they're different years. Like,
Okay.
yeah, and I think it was like 1904 and 1905. He was born very a long time ago, so this is 1900s, like the very beginning. So the data and the records, like if you look at my grandfather, he has multiple years of birth because the data is different. It's how it's stored. So you have to take that yes, there is racism, systematic racism, and why this is askew, but also there is different record keeping, and you have to keep that as part of that is the data. That's part of the data. So brain fart. So 2/3 or 67% of the cases were from 2010 to 2018, because remember the first report was done in 2017, so they've done other reports and they've updated it since then. And 6 were missing and murdered cases is what they found is 506. Well, we know there's more than that. But this is only, again, a very small, only 40 agencies gave them some data. So that's 40 cities out of the entire country. And that's, you got to keep in mind, that's very limited. And so out of the 506, 128 were missing. That's 25%. 280 were murdered, and that's 56%. And 98 of them were unknown statistics. They don't know what happened. I don't know why that is. Who? What? Okay. The ages range from 1 to 83.
Oh my.
Yep. 135 of them were aged 18 and under. 153 cases were not in law enforcement records, meaning, like going back to what I said, is social media, newscasting, news and talking to family and friends, they're telling you this person's missing or this person's murdered or this person's something, and yet there is no law enforcement record. That is huge significance to the data. And I keep saying data because I'm a math person and data is very important to
Or
me.
as I say, data.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I say it usually in context. So the city with the highest number of cases was Seattle, Washington. The state with the highest number of cases was New Mexico. So again, if we're talking about American Indians and Alaska Natives, those are going to be, especially if we're talking about reservations, because reservations are specific land that there is going to be more populations in certain reservations throughout different parts of the country. So you have to keep that in mind. We did kind of, we took their land and then we gave them crappy land and we gave them land that we didn't want. So at the time when we were giving them land, it was places that people weren't like populations were not.
And then also
Right.
now some of it's like, we know you have oil on your land.
Yeah. And then they're giving people to manage their stuff because if you are of, then you don't know what you're talking about and they make them considered incompetent so they could take their money. Yes. Between the
It's bad.
casinos and the oil, they're like, it's, yeah, it's not good. So even with looking at, I did 2 main resources, but I did a lot of other like things. The biggest theme here is we need better resources for better data, meaning these are invisible people. Like they are silenced voices, and hence the hand over the mouth. It's because we have lost data because we're not even caring enough about these people to put a report in a system. I mean, I don't know how long a police report takes to put in, but I'm sure you're just kind of putting in some information. I'm sure the rest of it's already populated.
No, and then also in the case of a lot of the sexual assault cases, as we've discussed when I mentioned the Me Too movement, a lot of people don't report that
Yep.
because they're not going to be believed or X, Y, and Z with the process. It's not worth it. Because if you try someone for sexual assault or rape or anything, a lot of the times it doesn't go in. It's typically a woman. It's not always a woman. It does not go in the victim's case.
Nope.
Not in their favor.
No, and there's a lot of, we just need to do better as a society for all people. And I get that if you have a murder case and you are just looking at a body, and that it is possible to incorrectly identify somebody by look. I do understand that. However, there are genetics, and I know that costs money, but it doesn't cost that much money to do basic genetic testing
It's a
thing.
normal thing nowadays for
No.
DNA anyways.
Just to find out like a race and ethnicity, like that's I can send in a kit that costs $100 and I can find out like my genetic makeup. So we can do better on that as
And
far
that's
as
them
record
making a
keeping.
profit because it was 23andMe.
Yeah, like so I get that there is an error by looking, but you do testing, we do autopsies, we do that. So that data should be better as far as the record keeping for murders. And if you don't find the body, then how can you record keep it? I get it. But if they're missing and they've been reported missing, and if the person is reporting them as saying that they are of a certain race, mark that right. Like, that's what I don't understand. How are we marking this wrong? If the people who are reporting them, if you report somebody missing, that means they're a significant part of your life. Like, the people in my life that I care about, I'd notice that they're missing, and so then, yes, I would possibly report them missing. Depending on who they are, I might go to their family to see if they need to report it, because, like, if a coworker just doesn't show up for a week, I probably won't be the one going to the cops. I would probably go, a couple steps before I get there.
Yeah.
But, like, I would probably correctly identify their race. Probably.
I mean, you're close enough, you would know
Yes.
ideally if they are considering themselves Indigenous or X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Or if they're at least somewhat Indigenous, it may be important to at least acknowledge because they're more likely to be targeted because of that. Just on looking at all the data and their higher rates of being murdered and all the other things. That's what we're talking about.
That's why I just don't understand how it's incorrectly being logged. Like, the reason they're saying that part of the data that we do have isn't inaccurate is because people are being logged as different races incorrectly. Well, okay, We just decided if they've been murdered and they have a body, then we do DNA, we do basic testing if we can't
Yeah, you
accurately
should be able to
do.
find out who they are.
Yep. And the people who are saying that they're missing and doing a missing persons report, they should be able to somewhat accurately, like, say what race they are. So I'm really confused on where the disconnect is, unless we're just writing things wrong to write things wrong. And I'm not trying to say that people are doing anything sketchy or not. I'm just saying I don't understand. Like, if I were to, report my daughter's missing, I would say they were white, but they are white.
We are
So
very white.
that's, yeah, we are so percentagely white.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason, like, I wanted to do this is because I do have my 23andMe data, and I found out that I've been lied to for my entire life.
Yeah, your aunt is registered with some tribe and has a card and identified
Yeah, I'm
things.
very, very confused by all of that.
I don't know.
Does she
But
not my
also
really
23andMe, I don't know how much data they have about indigenous DNA. I don't know how accurate. It's just DNA markers. It doesn't necessarily say where you're from as
Yeah,
accurate.
but
I don't know.
also, like, where or, like, is my dad, like, was he adopted? Were my aunts adopted? Is my dad not my dad? Like, there's so many questions there. I
Yeah,
mean,
I
my
don't
dad's
know.
guys, the world out there, my dad is my dad. There's no question with that or uncertainty with that. It's just weird that I've been told by my father and one of my aunts who are, you know, a lot of people are past. My dad's still alive, but and I don't think he was lying, and I don't think she was lying. I think that they were lied to, but and how did she get tribal numbers? Because you have to have records.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
A
don't
lot of
understand.
people are lied to and think they're Cherokee or things here in, East Coast,
Yeah,
but
I
they're not.
yeah. Oh well. Well, basically, we need to do better about all people, and if you don't believe it, then that sucks for your soul. That's about all I got for that. Cause
Okay, well,
yeah,
I guess.
yeah,
So, yeah, I went to the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. So, basically, the missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives is one way to put it. There's also missing Indigenous women and girls and Two Spirit because it's just, not typically male, is what they've also referred to as. Yeah, at the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, I'm going to go over a few of responses to this of grassroots advocates and family members and tribal leaders from across the nation that continue to call for public attention and accountability by federal authorities to address these crimes, and some of the acts that have been taken step forward to make things better. So, Savannah's Act on October 10th, 2020, Savannah's Act and Not Invisible Act were signed into law to address the missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives crisis. Tribal leaders, Native organizations, grassroots advocates, and survivors who fought long and hard to get this crisis recognized and addressed on the federal level supported these two bills. The passage of Savannah's Act and the Not Invisible Act are small but important steps in the right direction to provide justice for missing and murdered Indigenous women and relatives, and for all Native people who have experienced violence in their lives. Savannah's Act is named in honor of Savannah LaFontaine Graywind, a 22-year-old pregnant citizen of the Spirit Lake Nation in North Dakota, who was viciously murdered in August 2017. The fact that it says viciously murdered, I don't want to know the details, but that's already awful.
yeah.
Savannah's Act aims to improve the MIWR data collection. It directs the Department of Justice to review, revise, and develop law enforcement and justice protocols to address missing and murdered Indigenous peoples. And then the Not Invisible Act was signed in 19, complements Savannah's Act with its purpose to identify and combat violent crime against Indians or within Indian lands through the creation of an advisory committee on reducing violent crime against Native people. The advisory committee is composed of tribal leaders, law enforcement, federal partners, service providers, and survivors, who will make recommendations to the U.S. Department of Interior and Department of Justice to combat violence against American Indians and Alaska Natives. So, the Not Invisible Act Commission is a cross-judicial,
Judiciary?
no, not
No?
judiciary, judicial Advisory committee composed of both federal and non-federal members, including law enforcement, tribal leaders, federal partners, as we mentioned, all the groups with service providers, family members of missing and murdered individuals, and survivors. The Commission has developed recommendations through the work of 6 subcommittees focused on improving intergovernmental coordination and establishing best practices for state, tribal, and federal law enforcement to bolster resources for survivors and victims' families in combating the crisis of missing persons, murdered, and trafficking of American Indian and Alaska Native peoples. Okay, so it was written in 2019, it looks like, and then it was actually signed into law in
Passed.
October 2020 with Savannah's Act. It was commissioned and authored by then Representative Holland, and there's a lot of data
There's
out here.
a lot of
There's
data.
also not a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of data that shows that there's not a lot of data.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
And I believe May 5th
It
is
is.
the National Day of Recognition of the murdered and missing Indigenous people. As long as the symbol of the red handprint over your mouth, as I muffle myself demonstrating. And if you want to go, and again, Wikipedia, hit or miss resource. There's a lot on this page talking about also Canadian and United States data and some of the initiatives taking place. So yes, the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls was declared May 5th in 2018 as a National Day of Awareness to further concerns of this crisis and to refocus attention on issues affecting Indigenous women. And then we have Savannah's Act and the Non-Invisible Act. And then there's a few states that passed some bills in 2018, 2019. Then Washington, Arizona, and Wisconsin that would help create task forces or other increased awareness of the Indigenous people in their states and help them. I mean, you covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
There's not as much I can put in. There's a
Did
few things. I know you're talking. I'm going to
sorry.
interrupt you. The Red Dress Project is a public art installation dedicated to the remembrance of missing and murdered Indigenous women. It consists of red dresses hanging or laid flat in public spaces. This began the project in 2000 by Canadian Jamie Black. There's so many other movements that have been going on.
Yes, we should help all people, but when people are underrepresented and don't get the resources allocated, huh?
Yeah, not even to mention the fact they're statistically targeted at way, way higher rates. And you know what? The majority of people in the United States are descendants of immigrants or immigrants themselves, which makes our country great.
Yes.
Immigrants. Immigrants is what make Americans great.
Yeah. And
Even though we ruined the original Indigenous people, they are 3% and they do make this country great as well.
they
But
do.
my comment is more just on the fact that immigrants are still people, and that is what almost all of us are
Yes. Well, yes.
here in the
And,
U.S.
and if you look at, I mean, this is just an example. I don't teach history, but I was looking at stuff to make a coding and stuff lesson for 8th grade social studies, and it's looking at the foundation and the building of the U.S. and its history. And of course, there is a focus on North Carolina because we're in North Carolina. And so the lost, colony of Roanoke, that's a huge thing. It's been this big mystery since 1615. No, 15 something. I think it's 15 something. And, the whole he came back and he just saw Croatoan written on the tree. And so that means they were probably slaughtered or this or that. No, there was literally nothing. All of their homes, all of their cookware, everything was gone. Not just the people. They were all gone.
There were no bodies.
There was
How
no
can they
body.
be slaughtered if there's no bodies and no ground disturbed?
Yeah, there's no graves. No mass graves. No. So there is actual archaeological data resources now found, and they actually do think that they have genetic proof now. I think that's the last thing I saw was the biggest update was genetic proof that they were struggling and they had already made friends with the Croatoan tribe, and so they lived together. And of course, eventually there's going to be intermarrying, there's going to be babies. Like, those things are going to happen. So not only is the majority of people in this country not from the land here, but you also are probably descendants from a commingling of natives and people who stole their land.
And the natives have historically been very welcoming and supportive of the colonizers. I mean, when I talked about Pocahontas that one episode and the comparisons of the whitewashed story versus the true story, how welcoming uh the people were of just, hey, we're helping you, and okay, you're people too.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I would wholeheartedly support the understanding of if somebody were work on my property. I mean, I have full force of the Second Amendment on my side, not a stand my ground state. And I do not have anything to support the Second Amendment right in my home because, well, I just don't. Because why? That's not safe. I had small children and a very curious one who would get into everything. But these are things that, like, you have to keep in mind. We came to their land, their home, and we said, this is ours now. And we are going to take this land and we are going to populate this land and we are going to use your resources. Then we're going to come cry to you for help because we don't know how to farm this land or what the vegetation is. Oh my goodness, tobacco?
Wow. Or then slaughter all of their resources of bison and everything to make them starve and move out, and so we can take their land.
Yeah. So,
And then take up their children and whitewash them and force them to cut their hair and speak English and forget all their history.
and Christianize, because that's a big thing that I don't think people realize is I grew up hearing so many stories. Still
They were
weird.
uncivilized.
Yeah, like
Again, air quotes if you can't guess my sarcasm.
like I remember my dad telling me, like, so confused on why I was involved with church. He's like, I'm closer to God when I'm standing on the top of a mountain and there's a hawk. And I'm like, okay, that's you, man. Do you? I don't know. But he pushed that on me out of the three of us. Still not sure why. I still have
You're
a
the
book.
firstborn, you're the only girl, I don't know.
I don't know. My dad's weird. But I still have a book he gave me. And I have moved so many times since high school. Holy cow. I've moved, what, 4 or 5 times since I've lived in the state. Granted, I've been here for almost 20 years. So that, it's not really that big of an average. But he gave me this book that was Native American Women's Traditions. And I still have it somewhere. I saw it when I was reorganizing things. So, like, taking away somebody's just traditions and beliefs, wars are fought for that on a daily basis to this day. And we can't represent them in a database saying that they're missing,
And the
possibly
fact that they're
murdered.
targeted at a much higher rate.
I mean, I don't know what people know about reservations. And granted, 71% of women live in urban areas, but that other 29%, reservations are usually very impoverished. Their education system, because there are tribal schools. My aunt, weirdly, lived on a reservation for a little while. And she was like, you should come. They're always looking for teachers. You could go to school and become a teacher. This is a very long time ago. This is like, I was 20. I was not going to be a teacher. Nope, not happening.
You didn't want to be a teacher, then you didn't know what you wanted.
No. So, like, they're not going to have a lot of support behind them. So they can be victimized easier. It's just, we need to do better
Yeah,
as
and then
people.
of course, all of history going against who they are as people.
Yep.
But coming from two very white women that are not indigenous,
No, apparently
but
not.
yes, but wish to at least try and honor and respect those around us as decent human beings, the bare minimum can try to do. Here is a little bit of information about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls here in the United States and Alaska, and some of this also applies to Canada.
Canada. Yeah. So just do better, people.
Try and be nice. Love thy neighbor. If you're Christian, follow. Love thy neighbor.
Use privilege for good.
Exactly. If you
So,
are well off, donate to charities. And if you really want to be like, oh no, you get tax write-offs. Do
yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, donate your time. I know I don't have time.
And there's lots of
So,
ways to get involved from your desk, via online. And also, if you have the money and your time is some regarded that way, you can educate yourself through webinars and other well established from Indigenous point of views web series or other things on YouTube and other resources of websites.
And if you work, I mean, if you work for a corporation, your corporation, if it's a large corporation, so they get tax write-offs, they have education departments. They have um, eh, community outreach departments, like whole departments where people make tons of money sitting at a desk trying to decide who needs help.
Yes,
Help. You can get
you can
involved.
also directly go and ask them, be like,
Yep.
hey, I'm donating to so and so. Would you be willing to match me, or would you at least be willing to donate some? Because they could put a lot more than you could in most cases. Because $1,000 for me versus a company, very different.
Yes.
Very different.
Yes. So, I mean, there's lots of ways to make a difference, even if it is just talking to one person that
Spread the
day.
information. That's the
Yeah.
bare minimum. Just
Just,
let it be known.
I mean,
Let the
just,
voices be heard. And the example of the award ceremony with just simple having the painted red hand over your mouth.
yep.
Now, obviously, I don't know how inappropriate it may be for some of us to represent that, but be aware of it.
I probably get really, really, really big in trouble.
Just, reach out to the Indigenous people, find the resources and the people that have patience to educate you.
Yeah. I mean, in certain parts of the country where you're living, there is a higher population, like, and that gives you more opportunities than some, but and less for the people who don't live in those areas, but do better. Yep. And go do something extraordinary.